I'd like to continue with part 2 of the story of Rahab the prostitute. She lived in Jericho and probably lived a life that she was not proud of. The truth is that messy people come in all shapes and sizes. The world is full of them because when we get right down to it, messy people are simply people with sin in their lives. Romans 3:23 says, "For everyone has sinned and we all fall short of God's glory." Sin is a condition that affects us all, yet God chooses each of us and wants to use us if we'll let Him. God uses sinners. It's all He has to work with, right? Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are all God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things He planned for us long ago." This verse teaches us that we have been created to be used by God to do amazing things, and Jesus makes this possible. It tells us that in Christ we are a masterpiece in God's eyes, and He wants to use everyone for His purposes. When He chooses to use someone with a notorious past, it usually gets our attention. The spies didn't show up on the doorstep of a priest or a good person in Jericho. They chose a brothel. They ended up at the home of Rahab, a sinner, but she was much more than that. She was clever and worldly, and she handled stress well. Under pressure, she kept cool and came up with a way to save not only the spies, but also her entire family. The lessons that her hard life had taught her were not wasted when God called her to help His people. God uses messy people. God also uses those who respond in faith. God uses unlikely people like David. He was a murderer and committed adultery. Moses, he murdered and stuttered. He felt so unqualified. Mary, the mother of Jesus, was just a young small-town girl. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Esther was an orphan and Rahab was a prostitute. Both Esther and Rahab make an unlikely pair, one a queen and the other a prostitute. They lived 700 years apart, yet both women were critical to the survival of God's people. They were placed in divine positions and called upon to step up in a moment of courage and do the right thing. God uses unlikely people because it shows His grace and prevents people from boasting about their own accomplishments. He gets all the glory. 1 Corinthians 1:26-31 says, "For you see your called, brethren, not that many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called, but God has chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to confound things which are mighty. And the base things of the world and things which are despised has God chosen, and things which are not, to bring to naught things that are, that no flesh should glory in His presence, but of Him are you in Christ Jesus, who of God is made unto us wisdom and righteousness and sanctification and redemption, that according as it is written, He that glories, let him glory in the Lord." Think about the disciples, Peter, James, John, and Andrew. Jesus prayed long and hard before making decisions. In fact, in Luke it says that He went out to a mountain and prayed and continued all night in prayer to God before He made big decisions. These men that He chose were fishermen. They were tough and calloused men who worked demanding jobs, not being likely candidates for priestly training. They probably had received little formal education and instead had taken over the family business of fishing. When Jesus called them, everything changed. They were no longer rejected. They were chosen. Matthew, another disciple, was a tax collector. He was perhaps educated, but surely not well liked as a tax official in the Galilean region. These are some of the men that Jesus personally chose as His closest companions. Their lives are recorded for us to see thousands of years later. But how are they qualified? Let's look at a few of their stories and see what stands out. One day, as Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, He saw 2 brothers, Simon, also called Peter, and Andrew, throwing a net into the water, for they fished for a living. Jesus called out to them, "Come and follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people." They left their nets at once and followed Him. A little further up the shore, He saw 2 other brothers, James and John, sitting in a boat with their father Zebedee, repairing their net, and He called to them, "Come too." They immediately followed him, leaving their boat and their father behind. That's in Matthew 4:18 through 22. In Matthew 9:9, it says, "And Jesus went on from there. He saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. 'Follow me,' he told him. And Matthew got up and followed him." What does this reveal to us about their one qualification? They obeyed quickly. We don't see any perfect pedigrees here. There are no qualifications that seem to set them apart from others. What we do see are messy people with a willingness to respond to the call of God. They were willing to alter their plans for God. In fact, the word "at once" and "immediately" almost jump off the page. These men responded at once, immediately, in faith. Just like Rahab, when God taps you on the heart, how quickly do you tend to respond? And when you consider how God might want to use you, what obstacles do you feel are holding you back? When presented with the opportunity to help God's people, Rahab was quick to respond in spite of her fears. When you have the opportunity to serve God, there will be times when it's simple and sweet, but other times it'll be terrifying. It'll be messy and scary and uncertain. That is when the opportunity for faith comes. Exodus 4:10 through 13 says, "And Moses said, 'O my Lord, I'm not eloquent, but I'm slow of speech and of a slow tongue.' And the Lord said to him, 'Who has made man's mouth, or who makes the dumb, or the deaf, or the seeing, or the blind? Have not I?' asked the Lord. 'Now go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you should say.'" God does not call the qualified. He qualifies those he calls. God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Let him use you for his purpose. Come to him just as you are and let him clean you up. You don't have to be perfect to be used by him. Just have a willingness to be used and be quick to obey. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Be blessed. Shalom.